Hello and welcome to this tutorial video for SampleLogic's Rhythmology. If this is the first time you've seen Rhythmology in action, then I'd recommend also watching the overview and multis in action videos, which give a basic idea of how Rhythmology works and sounds. In this video I'll be showing off the features and functions of Rhythmology by building a patch from scratch, starting with an incredibly simple loop using just one loop core and then expanding that step by step into a fully realised patch using multiple cores, static and dynamic effects, and expanding the ideas with multiple playback pages. Of course, Rhythmology sounds great right out of the box with hundreds of presets and randomization at the click of a button, but it's a beast of an instrument with an incredible array of functions. Trying to learn everything at once could be daunting, so that's why I'm going to show you how every element of the interface works one by one, building up a patch so that you can hear exactly what each dial and switch does to the sound. So let's start with an instance of Rhythmology, and I've activated just loop core 1 and deactivated 2, 3 and 4. I've also turned off all the effects in both the static effects panel and the dynamic effects panel, which you can access just by clicking here. There's also a master effects panel accessible, that's just here. I've turned off all the effects in there too. So that leaves me with just one loop playing. It's very basic. You can choose which loop you want from the browser by clicking here. There are a possible 1050 different loop sources with all sorts of different styles and instrumentation, from acoustic drums to strident synths and deep atmospheres. So how do we navigate through these huge amount of loops? Well, each of them has been tagged with their style and instrumentation, so you can see the different tags just here. Just select one or more of these tags to choose a loop style, for example cinematic and electronic. Or funk and guitar. You can favourite some of your preferred loops by clicking the heart next to it, and that loop will be added to the favourites list, which you can access just here. You can also choose a random loop, but I'll come on to that in the randomization section later on. So let's keep things really simple to begin with. I'll choose loop 78, which is a pretty basic distorted drum loop. When I play on the keyboard, you'll hear that tempo synced sample play through and loop. Let's make some basic adjustments now. The loop is shown as a waveform just here, and it's split into 16 slices. We can mute, rearrange, and play these slices in different ways. Let's change step 2 to play the first slice again, and step 4 to play the third slice. A really simple adjustment. You can also mute slices by clicking the lights here. Click the little X icons here to clear the muting and rearranging. You can also set the length of the loop here. And you can set the playback of the slices to forwards, as you just heard, backwards as well. There's a ping pong option. Or you can dictate a set number of loops before the playback ends. If you change the loop, either using the arrows here or back in the loop browser, your playback settings will remain the same. Let's reset the playback and choose another loop. And then we'll have a quick look at the attack and decay controls for the slices. Opening the Mix Master panel here gives access to master adjustments and effects. Here you can change the volume, panning, saturation, velocity response, EQ, and slice, attack and decay of each loop core. At the moment each slice is set to minimum attack and maximum decay, but we can adjust these to create a more gated effect. There are EQ presets, and the Energizer knob increases the saturation and harmonics. So let's leave loop core 1 for now, and I'll deactivate it for the time being, and we'll move on to loop core 2. Each of these loop cores works in the same way, so I'll choose a guitar source this time, and that's loop number 396. Let's mix up the slices a bit. And I'll use the effects now to really mess with the sound. Access these matrix controls by clicking just here. There's a different matrix for each of the 4 loop cores. Each slice can have a variety of effects assigned to it, and there are static and dynamic effects. The difference here is that the static effects are triggered in time with each slice of the loop, but with the dynamic effects you can choose the speed that the matrix runs at. Let me show you. So the main effects elements are volume, panning, transposing, stutter effect, and reverse. Turn each effect on or off with its button to the left, or do the whole lot with command and click. Each of the 16 slices has either a value slider, as in the case of volume and panning, an on-off button, as you can see for stutter or reverse, or transpose, which has a plus or minus value, which shifts the pitch in semitones. To get you started quickly, the whole static effects matrix has presets available too. You can choose them just here. So let's demo a few of those. In addition, each individual element of the matrix also has presets, and these are numbered, and you can choose them either by browsing with the arrows or using the drop-down menu. You can also clear each effect's parameters values with the X buttons. Underneath the static effects, the dynamic effects work in basically the same way, but with way more options. There are 6 slots in total in which you can load 20 different effects, from EQ, delay, reverb, screamer, and loads of other ones too. Just like the static effects above, there are global presets that affect all of the effects. You can fill in the matrix in the normal way by simply clicking the buttons which switch the effect on or off for the 16 positions. There are also individual presets for each different effect. In the case of dynamic effects, you have the option to change both the number of steps just here and also the step resolution. So the dynamic effects matrix doesn't have to run at the same speed as the static effects. You might have noticed that some of the buttons in the dynamic effects matrix show this little step icon. That graphic indicates that the particular effect is animated and that the FX parameters will change with each step of the sequence. You just need to set that up in the FX window. So you can expand the FX window by clicking this icon next to the on-off effect button, and this will let you access all of the parameters for each of the 6 dynamic effects that you've chosen. The animated effects you can adjust by either using presets or you can draw in your own automated effects data just here. Before this all gets too overwhelming, let me just step back for a second and reiterate that you don't have to adjust every tiny element of each step, although that's certainly possible. One of the best features of Rhythmology is that the elements of the thousands of presets can be utilised in your own patches very easily. In fact, let's add loops 3 and 4 into the mix, and for this I'll use some of the presets supplied with Rhythmology. The loop core browser lets you load in just one loop and its parameters at a time without affecting the others. So let's choose the preset Jet Streamer under the electronic category for loop 3. and Crab Creek under the synth category for loop 4. Another great aspect to the presets in the browser window, you can just use elements of the Rhythmology presets using these two buttons. This one keeps your chosen loop and loads up just the parameters of a different preset. This other button keeps the parameters but changes the loop source. So back to our patch in the making, and I've now got 4 loops running simultaneously with various complex effects on each. Playing on the MIDI keyboard, I've got the option of playing all 4 loops together on key C3, or I can use D3, E3, F3 and G3 to trigger loops 1, 2, 3 and 4 at different times. If I wanted to add variations to this patch for more variety, I can copy it up to 3 more times to more playback pages. You can see the controls for that at the top left of the interface. Add and remove pages with the plus and minus buttons, and you can copy and paste the entire patch too with these buttons. So it's really easy to set up variations. I'm going to go ahead and change some of the effects parameters in the B, C and D playback pages. When playing live, you use MIDI keys C2 to F2, and these will switch between the 4 playback pages. Once I've found a combination that I like, I can save it using these controls. Bear in mind that it is possible to overwrite a preset, so you might want to create a duplicate first. There's just a couple more things I must mention, but they're really important and greatly add to the creativity of Rhythmology. The first is the Mix Master menu, which I've briefly touched on before. The bottom section of this interface applies effects to the entire instance of Rhythmology across all loop cores and playback pages. There are 6 slots for effects, all with adjustable parameters. So just click here to open and adjust them. There are also a range of master presets. Last but not least, a quick look at the randomization button and its filters. You can arm different loop cores for randomization by selecting or deselecting the R icon in each core. When you open the randomization options, you'll see a number of checkboxes which apply to different parameters of the sound. For example, I can randomize the panorama by clicking just that box and leaving the others blank, so that when I hit the random button, the panning is the only parameter that's randomized. Here's another example, reorganizing the loop slices. Another cool randomization function is the random play button. It won't affect loop source, loop core or the effects chain, but for everything else it will. If it's activated, then whichever parameters you have ticked will randomize each time you trigger the loop or the loop repeats around. I can keep all the effects parameters but randomize the sound sources by doing this. Or any other number of creative possibilities. keep the parameters of Rhythmology that you love, and leave the rest to chance for some very inspiring processing. You can always reset any preset back to default parameters by clicking here. So that was a walkthrough of creating a patch in Rhythmology, going through the steps as if you wanted to create a new preset from scratch. Of course, you can apply any of these techniques to the hundreds of Rhythmology presets to tweak the patterns and programming to your own needs. Even though I've tried to cover everything, there are still some elements that I've brushed over. For a full rundown of all the features, take a look at the Rhythmology manual, and to hear more, check out the Multis in Action video. Don't forget to head over to SampleLogic.com for more information, and thanks so much for watching.